I found that people like to just kind of open up to me, and I've always admired that type of genuineness that I see in people as compared to like the whole dry, like, hey, how's it going? Weather, the
Right. Yep.
weekend, any plans, and then either talk about work or if you're just out in public in general, it's like I hate the small talk. I Small talk is so easy, you don't have to think about it. There's no sustenance to it. Why? It's predictable, and stuff that is predictable in a sense is not worth paying attention to in my mind. I like chaos. I like
I
dynamicism.
like
I
chaos.
like chaos. I like dynamicism. I like the to find because that's what life is in general. It's
It is.
chaos.
Yes.
And it is your goal in life to manage the chaos. That is what I like is managing the chaos. You can't control it all. You can manage it and you can, work your way through it or around it.
Real quick, everyone. This is Alexander Stovall.
Mm.
Thank you for being here on the podcast today. Today's episode, or today in general, I'm really excited for because the day we're recording is April 1st. And so for those who have been part of this journey, the first 3 episodes got published yesterday around noon. And published just means that I basically authorized the publishers to go and release them into the universe. And I was told that it would take 24 hours, and the idea was that every Saturday at noon the podcast would start dropping. Well, Spotify picked it up around like 3 or 4 p.m. yesterday. Apple Podcasts and a couple other sites picked it up by, what time did I get to the stadium? Probably by about 6 p.m. And in the last 24 hours, we've already had 35 downloads, which I'm super excited about because that's with only telling my immediate family. I texted about 10 close friends, so that makes up about 15 people. So unless all of them have listened to 2 episodes already, which I highly doubt they did, that means there's 15 to 20 people that I have no idea how they found us, but somehow they found us and they're listening to it. So for everyone that has listened already, thank you so much. It's really awesome. And these the first 3, all had a great story to tell. So I think that they're genuinely really interesting episodes because of them, not because of me. The only other thing I wanted to say is I am wearing my Stars jersey today. We unfortunately lost last night. Never been to a hockey game in my life, but then came out to Austin, went to a game with 0 expectations, had so much fun that I walked out with no voice because I was yelling at the refs so much and a jersey on my back. So I've started reaching out to some of the players. Even last night we got my buddy that I went with got me the business card for their marketing director, so I'm going to try to get in touch and have a couple of them on the show at some point. But yeah, so here we are. Back to you. You joined the Marines. What was I going to ask you? When you think about your time in the Marine Corps during those 5 years, do you have a favorite story you like to tell or a favorite memory that sticks out to you?
That's the thing. Well, my brain always likes to think of when I went to Japan. It was going to a different country outside of America is really a whole like world flipping viewpoint. And like you see a whole different culture, a whole different way of people interact. And I remember coming back to America is that just on average, Americans are really rude.
I could see that without even necessarily having to leave the country.
Yeah, but it was
Aw,
the fact.
that's too bad.
Yeah,
That's your takeaway from leaving the country.
is to find out that you're like you don't like some aspects about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, again, it's like a little bit of self-reflection thing. But I would kind of classify just like the whole Japan experience was a nice little thing that I'd like to credit for part of my growth and what I've on. I'm also simultaneously trying to think about some of the other things that have happened when I was over there in Japan
While
that
you're
kind of stuck
thinking
out to
about
me.
it, what did they do that was kind, that showed, that gave you that perspective that perhaps America's, or at least let's keep it to the, whatever town you grew up in, that people could be kinder? What would they do over there that you observed?
So let's say, for example, I walk into almost any single type of restaurant that I would go to over there, whether it be a smaller or like a little bigger restaurant, you would be immediately greeted by the entire kitchen staff if they could see and or hear you. And it would be like whatever the greeting of the day is, the time of the day, like Ohayo gozaimasu, which is like good morning, konnichiwa the afternoon, konbawa the evening.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, they would say that, and it'd feel like welcome home.
Mm.
That's the vibe that's the vibe it gives off. It's like
Oh.
it's sort of like the I wouldn't say as heartwarming and celebratory as walking into a tavern where everyone knows your name. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
like everyone
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wasn't that like that, but it was, I'd say like maybe a few levels below that, but it still felt, welcoming was the thing. And people were very respectful to you whenever. The thing is, whenever you would hand over payment or something, you would either be with both hands or you'd set it in a little tray, and that tray would, it's part of the ritual of exchanging, services and currency. And here in America, it's just like, I'm not interacting with a person. I'm in the card machine, or like here's the money in the check. They come and pick up the check. There's no like face to face, you know, interaction with people.
Yeah.
And things are clean over there, so clean. The recycling programs, they're like, due to the fact that it's a small set of islands, they have to manage their resources pretty well.
Yeah.
So they're very good on recycling, and you don't really see a lot of crazy, rude, Japanese people over there. At least, so I was in Okinawa. I can't speak for mainland.
Sure.
Okinawa is just a little smaller island that's still considered part of Japan, but it's even I still hear about like how nice the people are in the mainland as well from my friends that have went over there. Didn't have the pleasure, but and then I came back here disoriented by people driving on the right,
Yeah,
whereas
I can see that. Yep.
yeah, people is driving on the left, but just the sort of I'm pretty sure you've experienced this too. Not a lot of people. I like to smile and nod too. There's certain times where I don't, but like if I catch someone's eye, I'll do like a little nod, something like that. I'm acknowledging your existence in here, and I hope you have a good day with a little smile. That's what I hope I'm kind of projecting it out. There's a lot of that. Oh yeah, my favorite thing, the thank yous in Japan. The You show how thankful you are by, your it's like a little head nod, a little bow. The more you're bowing, the more thankful you are, to the point where it's like, like that, like it's like, oh, it's like arigato, arigato.
Yeah.
You can just tell we have different ways of saying, our appreciation and thank you, but that's their own gauge, I guess. Their own little parameter is how far you would kind of like bow down.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's like arigato, arigato gozaimasu, and arigato gozaimasu ka. There's like three different things that I've heard so far in terms of like the thank you, and each one is more thankful than the previous one. But yeah, that's some of the stuff that I admired about being over there in Japan.
One of our guests, her name is Hidea. She was her family. She was born here in America, and then at one point she moved back home to Morocco, where her family came from. Stayed there for a few years. She's now back in the States again. But she was telling me that it's very normal to invite strangers into your home and to serve them a meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, just because that's how the culture is. You see someone who looks like they may need food, or she often said too, it might be travelers or tourists, because they sort of stick out and you can tell that they're not necessarily residents, and so it's easy to identify them and just be, I don't know how they greet them. I wish I asked her like how, what that process would look like of, what they say and how they sort of incorporate them in. But it seems so cool to me, because even with my neighbors, like I know all three of their names now. I've made small talk with them for a little bit, but I would think that if the very first time I met them, I invited them over for a meal, it might come off as strange to them. Even someone here, I got invited to a stand-up comedy night from one of the other guests. I didn't want to go alone because I didn't.
Yeah.
I wanted to go with at least one other person. And so I invited someone from the gym, and I could tell it threw him off a little bit. And for me, but it falls back to what we were talking about earlier. I forget if we were on or off mic yet, but I want to start treating people the way I want to be treated. And so if someone has a 5-minute interaction with me and they genuinely enjoyed those 5 minutes and they're thinking, I'm going to go do X tonight, I'll invite David along. Sure, why not? I would love to see more of that, man, of just us not being afraid to, I don't know what threshold you have to cross for it to be socially acceptable to invite someone to a comedy night with you.
Yeah.
But for him, I could tell we hadn't crossed whatever that line was yet. And this could be me overanalyzing things because I do that with everybody.
Same.
Also trying to be better at it. But when I ran into him at the gym the next time, I went to say hi to him, and he didn't even say hi back. He just said, he looked at me real quick, took a headphone out, and was like, hey, I can't talk today. I'm pressed for time. Put his headphone back in and walked away. And so then, of course, I immediately went into like, fuck, man. Like, that could have been a potential friend, but because I invited him out to something too early, it came off as too forward, and now he doesn't even want to have small talk with me. Again, I could be completely wrong. He could have genuinely just been pressed for time, and he had to get to work or to whatever. But I don't think I was wrong in reading his awkwardness when I did invite him out.
Right. I can speak. I feel like I'll speak for him because I feel like I've done. I know I've done the same thing too. I'm pressed for time. Sometimes it's like my own. It's my me time. I come to the gym. I'm personally not. I don't want to be sitting around talking. I just want to get in here, do the work. Do the workout. I have other things that I would like to do and need to do. So I guess maybe kind of pressed for time, but To sit down and genuinely talk to someone, you have to allot time. And in this day and age that we live in too, especially this culture, people plan out a lot of things. We have a lot of things that we want and need to do. And sometimes, unplanned things we don't really want to shoehorn into that. But people, I guess for like thresholds, I've noticed too, is that there needs to be some sort of like digestion time of an interaction. So let's say, for example, like a new face. Okay. I know who this person is. I've seen them a few times. They frequent around where I frequent. That's like the first type of digestion. Like like someplace that you go to a lot. You'd see, okay, yeah, this person's here. Then maybe hey, I noticed you come here, a lot. So hey, nice to meet you. I see you're here about as much as I am. Find the immediately relatable topic. It's like what do you like about. You don't immediately phrase it like that, but you find the conversation and it naturally guides to, you talking about the thing that you're, like, say, for example, if you went to, like, the comedy club and you'd be both talking about the shows that you've seen, the stuff that you guys have found funny as of late. At least that's my observed natural progression of, like, friendships nowadays, is that people are so defensive and on guard for just a lot of things. You don't know what type of intentions people have from the get-go. And it seems like nowadays the ones that have very strong personalities, Leo, who have strong personalities seem a little bit off-putting because most people nowadays, like the ones that are confronting you are scam artists, like unwarranted phone calls, advertisements, like pyramid schemes, any other crazy crimes that people like to commit, but, like they're not going to be upfront about it. There's like some ulterior motive going on. And I think that there's a lot of factors that go into people's inhibition. People are also not as adventurous. So like it's the whole risk-taking thing, because I mean that's essentially what it is for like if you were to go do something for the first time with someone that you just met at that point, it's literally risk-taking.
Right.
Just in any type of way, and that's people's own way of risk mitigation, if you will. Yeah. But I would say culture does play a huge part into the openness of people. With a type of fostered environment and practices that people apply into their day-to-day lives can have a huge, tremendous effect on interacting with strangers, as opposed to, here in America where it's like, you chase the dream that you want. It's a competition out there. and everyone else is against you. Type of thing. It's not explicitly said, but I feel like that's the type of environment that we fostered here, and that's why people are kind of like, this is my own little treasure. I'm gonna kind of hold on to it, nurture it.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to come and talk to me? Do you want my treasure? Do you know about my treasure? And it's like, oh, you don't know anything about that treasure. You just want to talk. But people aren't used to that here, and I think that's where we're at right now.
What you were describing a minute ago, one person describes it as the nearness effect, and it's the best example for it is if you're in a classroom of people, if you all have the same class together, you're probably going to be in that class for 16 weeks. You're going to see these people 2 times a week, 3 times a week, however many, whatever the cadence is that the class is being attended. So by the time you're halfway through the semester, you do feel a familiarity. Did I say that
Yep,
right?
I say familiarity. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly either, but
people know what we mean though.
Yeah.
And you naturally lower your guard a little bit. So if I do see someone in the gym, or a couple times I've even come across people's Instagram pages that go to the same gym as mine, and instead of reaching out to them like I did with you, I'll instead think, let's wait a month or two, and I'm going to make a mental note to make eye contact with this person, like you mentioned, do the head nod, and once I've seen them 3 to 10 times, somewhere in there, I'll finally just introduce myself to them and just, then start the conversation, whatever it is. Because I do think that you bring up a great point. For me, I'm going again to another comedy night tonight. Have a free ticket, by the way, if you want to join. And I didn't even bother trying to invite anyone to go with me for that reason of I've only been here 90 days, and I really haven't built a ton of rapport with anyone. That's just not that much time, and I think friendships do take, it's in our culture that it does take time to develop, and you're right, people are guarded over their time, their energy, and their money, because those are probably our top 3 resources, and I think a lot of people do think that there's some sort of catch involved, like, oh, well, do I need to invite him out to something because he invited me out to something, or whatever the thing is.
I think there's also there's another factor too. I've always seen it as people are, to a degree, inherently selfish in one way or another. Friendships, we don't think about this. It's not like directly in front of our brain, but subconsciously there's like, what does this person have to offer to me that I like admire about it? So it's like, this person makes me laugh. This person, always has snacks, or, this person does X, Y, or Z. There's something in our subconscious that we note with our interaction with someone that it's like, you don't really see too much too much of a desire of a genuine, like, I want to socialize with people because I want to socialize with people. That's few and far between. Some people, with how limited our time is, like we need a sort of payment out of that interaction, if that makes sense, like a tit for tat, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's not like a very direct, factor, but I do feel like there's that plays a lot into why people are reluctant, because it's like, what am I going to gain out of this interaction here?
Yeah.
So,
What's been really interesting is I've had 2 people, maybe 3, who I messaged about coming on the podcast, and their very first response back was, what's your budget for guests to show up? Or how much am I going to get paid? And it's so funny, man, because I got, we were talking about this on another episode. I said, I told him I'm debating the word. I either got lucky, blessed, whatever word you want to insert, that I hit up X amount of people. You're a great example. And you were just, yes, let's do it. I'm down to collaborate. Or at minimum, I'm down to jump on the phone, talk about the basis of the podcast, and then make a decision as to would this be worth my time or not. That for those 2 or 3 people who, without knowing what the podcast was about, where they would have to drive, how long it was, it's immediately just, how much money are you going to pay me to do this? And I'm like, none.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, this is experience.
No,
yeah,
I will pay you in LaCroix, tea, and coffee.
Yeah,
unlimited amount.
And dog pets.
And dog pets.
Yeah.
He will be underneath your feet for at least a small portion of the podcast. But Yeah, those two or three individuals, it sort of put. I had to check myself because I immediately had some sort of negative emotion rise up, and I'm not even sure what the emotion was.
Mm-hmm.
And my fingers wanted to write back, "Fuck you." And with all of them, I just very politely said, "There is no budget. I'm so sorry. It's an open invitation. So if you can change your mind and if you have a couple of hours somewhere down the road, please hit me up at any time."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, it's just been an interesting experience. And one person blocked me.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was scrolling through my messages to see who did I message about 3 weeks ago, they haven't followed up yet, and that's the recruiter in me. So now I need to send them a follow-up message. One person on Instagram, the message is still there, and it just says Instagram member. And I thought it was funny that was their reaction,
Yeah.
is to not just say no or not to decline the message, but to block my profile completely.
Yeah.
That's strange.
I feel like it's also a commonplace too nowadays. Like, I'm pretty sure you've met some like scammy people on like Instagram or something. You get
Oh,
messages
yeah.
like you just don't know nowadays, especially like online. You don't know the face behind that message that sent that to you. You don't know that person. You don't know if it's real or not. You don't know if it's a bot. There's so many unknown factors, and hey, here's this opportunity at we're going to be doing this. And initially, some people, like, I'll be honest, when I first got the invitation, I was like, this sounds scammy. And then I looked into it a little more. I saw like what you were doing, and like again, you sounded so genuine when you were talking back to me. And the fact that I feel like blanket responses are commonplace to kind of gauge where the conversation is going. You were very direct and also open about, and also what is it, active listening, because not only anything that I said to you, you were able to rephrase it and deliver it back in part of your response, and then connect what else you wanted to inquire about. And you don't really see that much of conversation when it comes to like messaging, in a sense, or at least when it comes to like bots or scam artists. And when there's that disconnect that's not there, but I felt the genuineness, and that's why I was just like, okay, yeah, let's see where this goes, because
At
I
minimum, David is not a scam.
not a scam. Mm-hmm.
That's part of the reason I was itching to get some episodes released, and I very patiently forced. Well, it wasn't patient at all, because if I was patient, I wouldn't have been itching. But a part of me just wanted to get them dropped. That way, if people Google a podcast, they can see at least it's real. Like, there are real people doing real things, and
Yeah.
it's not a scam. So partly just to build validity with people, it feels good to have some episodes out there now.
To establish is the hardest thing. To establish it's the first steps. To do the first steps, that's the hardest part. Then the rest is easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what this is.
I've almost thought for some of the guests, I typically thought to myself, I don't want to do a deep dive into their Instagram page until they agree to coming on, because what if I research Alex for an hour and then write a very customized message of, "Hey Alex, I saw that you were in the Marine Corps. I can tell that you work out and that you now work for XYZ company. Would you come out, and like to do a podcast on like these three subjects?" I told myself, I don't do that, because you could put so much time into researching someone, and then what if they never respond? But to your point too, that very first message I sent out, I think if you read it, you can tell no hot secrets being released here. 98% of that message is pre-written, and I'm really just inserting your name and then one or two things that I can glean from a 2-minute scan of your page, and that's about as most customizing as I'm doing.
I'd say it's customized for you. I'd say part of your genuineness, and then you have your genuine framework. So that's how I'd say. I wouldn't say it's more like I don't feel insulted that it's like a pre-constructed thing, but it's like it's something that you constructed. So,
I do think you
and
can
it's
hear
an
my
extension.
voice in it.
Yeah.
I did read it as I was coming up with it. I probably changed it 8 or 9 times, because I would read it out loud and I would think, no, that doesn't sound like me, or no, that doesn't sound very human, or whatever it was. So there was some thought put behind it. But
I do that too. I think about I spend so much time, like especially if it's someone that I'm sort of friends with, still trying to develop the friendship in a way. I overanalyze the hell out of what I want to say, just because I know there's been plenty of times where it's like, ooh, I shouldn't have said that.
yeah.
I try to carefully craft, because I also have a hard time thinking time to time too. So I like every time when I'm pausing, that's literally my brain stopping and pausing, and I have to like pick it back up, catch it. But also, it gives me a lot of time to think about what I really want to say and how to, again, with semantics and whatever the other word is for just loving words in general, is that direct, using the proper words to directly convey what I want to convey, and leaving little to no room for interpretation.
One thing I was really impressed by, I'm going to shout out Bianca Parado. Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
She's a local comedian. She's here in Austin. Would love to have her on the show one day. But when I went to see her, there is a heckler in the crowd. Do you know what that is?
Kind of I've heard the word plenty of times, but I feel like it's sort of like along the lines of banter. You're trying to get someone to do something.
In their case, how I would describe it, it's when you start talking out of turn during a comedy act. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing if they ask a question, but if they're mid-performance and you just start talking out loud where the whole crowd and the performer can hear you, mm-hmm. It's rude. This person in this case, it was a big enough deal that he got kicked out. Bouncers came over, escorted him out of the room. Doubt he got his money back. I hope he didn't. Mm-hmm. But what was impressive to me is not only did she have a rebuttal, but it was hilarious because she had no idea, first, that he was going to interrupt her, and second, what he was going to say once he started talking. And I'm like you, where I need to register things sometimes, and I need to come up with how do I want to respond to this situation. So the fact that her mind works so quick that she was able to come up with something that made a room full of people laugh while on stage when her groove just got interrupted. I was just like, holy cow. Like, if that's something a comedian needs to be successable,
the wit,
she'll be fine. Like, she'll be one of the few that hopefully makes it.
Back to that, remember I was talking about me and duality?
Yes.
On the other side of the spectrum, there's been multiple times where my wit is come into play and can easily just like come in like that. I don't know on the level of hers, but with a quick little rebuttal, or I'm always one for humor. If I can find a way to make something funny or to subvert some type of like negative interaction or something, like I will use humor. And that's me on the other end, is being able to quickly do something like that. But the fact that I'm so separated in that way on opposite sides of the spectrum is something that I like to appreciate, is the balance of things. Because you could call it sitting on the fence. You could call it a multitude of other things. But for me, it's literally the appreciation of the, for lack of better words, mechanics of the way how the world works. And you can't appreciate really one without the other, because that's just the balance of things. You can't appreciate the light without the dark, because if all you know is light, you don't it's the same thing with sound. If all you know is that sound, nothing's going to really stand out. So you can't see both sides of it and appreciate it.
I heard someone say recently that all of his competitive advantages evolved from a place of darkness. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was interesting, that as he reflected on his life and he looks at who I am right now today, and the greatest parts of my personality and my skill set that I bring to the table all came from some sort of struggle. What if you never had struggle? Mm-hmm. So now I started thinking about my teenage years and even recent times, and I would agree with that statement 100%. And I think I've developed some skills and parts of my personality that didn't necessarily come from struggle. Mm-hmm. But you bring up a very good point, that I almost think that, and we were talking about this earlier with the sauna, we're just circling back 20 minutes later, that, oh man, could you imagine if you never had anything bad happen to you? Do you think you would look anything like what you look like now?
Not at all. That's the funny thing too, is that I remember explicitly thinking this too when I was younger. I was kind of in a weird way jealous of my friends that had shitty lives.
Yeah.
In a weird way, because it's like they always had something to talk about. There was always something that they had to talk about, and people pay attention to people who always have something to talk about in a weird way. So me, where any type of negative bad thing was just not there in my life, at the time I didn't think of it as growing. I just looked at it pure and simply as like nothing bad happens to me, really. So it's like I don't really have any like stories of triumph, I guess, if you look at it from a pure and distilled standpoint. People who had like divorced parents or something that's going on in their home, or like some negative friendships, like people were captivated by those experiences. And me, nothing bad has ever really happened in my life. I mean, sure, I mean, doesn't mean that, that's all that people really need to talk about, but it seemed like they had more substance of just things in general to discuss. And then there's always just me just kind of like, hi. So it kind of forced me into a little path of like, I know what I can talk about, humor. I like humor.
Yeah.
And I kind of grew up in that way. But that's, and I think that played a further part into wanting challenge and discourse and a need to overcome something. I won't say a need to overcome something. It really depends on how you look at it. If you look at a need to overcome something, or is it a desire for growth? It's really just a way of how you want to frame it.
One of our guests, he was just 1 week ago actually, was talking about how he was raised in a family that financially they were always very secure, even beyond secure. And so when he was somewhere between 17 and 19 years old, he moved out and he took none of their money, asked for zero help, and there were times during those years where he was questioning, how am I going to pay my rent? Where he wanted to be in shape, going to the gym, eating a healthy diet, but buying something even as like something that I would consider simple or cheap, like, oh, you should be able to afford that, like ground beef or ground turkey. It's what, $3.50 a pound, maybe $4. Who knows? Doesn't matter. But he couldn't even afford that sometimes, and so he would go to the grocery store with $50 and decide, with this $50 that I have to my name, like, this is it. What am I going to buy this week? And now he's only 21 years old. He's running a successful business. I did not ask him how much he's making because that's not my business, but I think you can observe someone's car, their clothes, their demeanor, and you could probably make some assumptions about, like, even just seeing now that he can afford like a protein drink, like that says something, right? If you are living paycheck to paycheck, you might not be buying a $4.75 pre-workout when you get to the gym. So I'm making the assumption that he's at least, living a balanced life, you could say. And I wonder too, like, if he never forced himself into that situation, would he have anywhere near the success that he's having now? To be running a company at 21 years old, very successfully, and he does not have the bandwidth to take on any new clients right now, that's phenomenal to me.
Yeah, it's literally the whole trial by fire. People learn when they are able to adapt. That's literally been the human race over time, is how well has, this line of, genes, how far have they been able to adapt? And that's the thing that we will continue to see as time goes on. That's where we are, especially digitally now, with all this, especially like this AI stuff. And, we're about to enter a new period of adapting right now.
I'd be really curious to get your thoughts on that. By day, I forget if I told you this, but I'm a recruiter, and I feel like ChatGPT is being brought into my world daily. I have not used it myself. I don't even know what it looks like. I couldn't even tell you, is it an app or a website? I have no idea. But I think you bring up a point that things will change. Recruiters are freaking out that they're going to lose their job. Based off what I've heard, I don't think that ChatGPT is going to unemploy any of us. I think it might make us more efficient. I think that we might be able to utilize it as a tool, but it doesn't scare me into thinking I'm going to need to change professions in a couple years because of this thing. From what you've observed, is there any piece of tech, anything that you've seen on the rise in the last couple months, couple years that's caught your attention, and what do you think it's going to change in the next couple months, years, whatever the time frame is?
Over the years, I've really been paying attention to just the AI stuff. So the AI art generation, I think that's where it kind of started, is like the whole like word to visualization prompts. That's where I noticed things start. So let's say, for example, I want to see a dog, chilling on the couch, and which type of art style or art medium. Like you could say, dog chilling on the couch, oil-based paint, style, and it would generate something based on the whole collection of whatever it was able to find on the internet, morph it into, that as best as it could.
Yeah.
Surely there's glitches, but it's been refining over these years. Now we're seeing AI audio, and like music, they've been kind of working on that a little bit. Some people are scared with how it's already going to affect the audio industry. AI voice now.
Yes.
Yes, that's also another thing.
May I interrupt you
Go ahead.
real quick? I watched the editing software I'm using for this podcast did an hour-long training yesterday for free on YouTube. Anyone can watch it. If you want to know how to watch it, if you're thinking about creating, shoot me a message. But the company's called Descript, and they have something called overdub, where I speak for 30 minutes to an hour into the software, and then 48 hours later, it sends me back my voice. And it was basically showing how I wanted to do a 20-minute video on how to start a podcast. I could type out the entire script, hit enter, and it would sound just like me, and I wouldn't actually have to do any talking. I could just have my overdub voice to it. And it was sort of cool, sort of creepy, but I also walked away thinking my whole joy from this is sitting down and talking with you. And even if I did create that video, I would want to create it myself, because in the moment I might think of little jokes or little puns, and it would be a lot more natural. I almost didn't get the point behind it. I'm like, who would want? Why would you? I would never use that.
The way I see it is save time, being able to just pop these out like no other. Of course, with anything that you lose the distillation of it, the concentration, because that's basically what you're doing. Is if you can just type it up, voice generate it, that's that. No one would know the better, really, unless they're like super observant. Right. But I feel like all this AI stuff is going to get into a period of we are already living in a lot of misinformation that we live in today, and that's just going to further push how big of an era this is, that we might be into an age of misinformation, especially if we continue to refine these processes where we can generate an image, we can generate a voice, we can generate some audio without being able to detect it. I know there's software out there that they're trying to develop to be able to distinguish if something was generated or not, which is a good thing, but it's a little bit scary, in a sense, because I remember thinking too, at least in the music industry, because initially that's why I wanted to be an audio engineer, was I love music, anything and everything about music. I just appreciate it all. Yeah. And for someone to just be able to generate something without a lot of creativity, like, say for example, I like to call it corporatized music. It's like it sounds very islandy, probably has like a lo-fi beat on it and there's something in the distance, and if they have visuals, probably some drones looking down somewhere and it's flying over in a smooth line. It's like, it's bland, there's no emotion to it, nothing makes it stand out from the rest. Yeah. And we'll probably see a lot more consistency of being blandness with AI, because I think that's the one thing that is missing, is genuineness. Unless I feel like they managed to factor into the programming, some genuine factor. Yeah. I don't know. You can randomize. It's easy to randomize things, but I feel like it's the human touch. That's what it usually comes down to. Remember, I always think when people had digital art was coming, I was like, oh no, we're gonna lose our physical art medium. Mm-hmm. Oh no, and I was like, no, it's still there. The charm's still there. It's just the people that can appreciate it will appreciate it. It's just you won't have the mass populace appreciating it, because the mass populace likes to take things at face value. Yeah. So the ones who've been through it or have learned about it can appreciate it. Like the process, most people don't know for a podcast like what it takes to set up a podcast and make it work. They just think microphone, talk. That's it. Yep.
I found down on the table, hit that voice memo, and you and me are just off to the races.
Yep. And I'm making millions of dollars after that. No, that's not it. There's so many other things into it. Like, sure, you can have the podcast set up, but do you have the charisma? Do you have the ability? Are you able to keep someone's attention with whatever you're discussing? Yeah. And let alone that, like, did you edit the video so that way there's like little to no room for someone to be like, okay, I don't want to watch this anymore. There's so many other factors. I think that's kind of where AI will fail, in that sense. But I can kind of see it destroying some things. To go back to ChatGPT, I've seen it used to like debug code. I've had friends who've used it to like they're like programmers and also like in IT environments to, okay, this issue is happening. What do I need to do to fix this issue for this device? And it will literally like instructionnaire step by step, which is perfect in the IT environment. That's all that you really need to do is just a little step by step thing.
Yeah.
Once it's identified what the problem is. But I've had like it will create stories for you. You say like, I've seen in the shit posting world, I need some fan fiction between Joe Biden and Muhammad Ali, and they're both furries, and it would probably generate like a whole it would generate like a whole story in whatever format that you asked it for. But ChatGPT is scary in the terms of how conversational it can sound. There's still some flaws to it, but it can also be conversational, but also equally instructional and in terms of just providing assistance. If anything, I can see it taking over for troubleshooting. So like call centers or something like that. Hey, I have an issue with this. Phones can already tell when you say like, please, push 1 or say, yes or no. Yep, they can already distinguish that. So I can already see that working into that and AI voice generation. Sounds like you're talking to someone, but that position can easily be filled out just because it's been refined to be able to do that well. I'm pretty sure you've gotten some phone calls where it's like you say yes and it says, you said no? Okay, goodbye. And you have to restart the whole process.
Yeah.
It's still kind of in the baby stages of it. That's where we all, well, actually, I'm sorry.
You're good.
I think that's the thing that people are freaking out about is that we're in the baby stages of AI. And that's what's scary is how efficient it already is with how early in its development it is. And people are speculating where it's going to go because at the end of the day, no one really knows. No one really knows if it's going to become popularized amongst the community. Like, who would have thought cell phones, almost everyone would have one? Who would have thought everyone would have a car? Is this going to become another tool that the average person is going to be able to utilize, or is it going to be, limited to a select few? And I think that's just the unknown right now. We're trying to figure out what we can utilize it for.
When before I was in recruiting, I was in accounting, and I was thinking about ChatGPT in the sense of being able to roll someone's financial statements a year forward.
Mm-hmm.
So, for some reason, from December 31st to January 1st, most businesses, especially smaller companies that are doing 10 million or less in revenue, their books are always a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get hired to either audit the financial statements or to do the tax return, we also end up doing a lot of bookkeeping for them because it just didn't roll forward correctly. And I was thinking that would be badass if you could take that financial statement, put it into a system like ChatGPT, and it would just roll everything forward for you, because that would take away hours of just headache work. And granted, the one downfall to that is having to do that work manually probably makes all accountants better, because that's where the analytical part of your brain has to kick in to figure out why did this not move forward correctly when we crossed into January 1st of X year. So it might also make accountants dumber, which wouldn't be a good thing.
Yeah.
But it also, like I said, is just such a pain in the ass that it would be a really cool solution.
Yeah, and that's how I feel like technology has kind of helped humanity in a sense, is like what parts of it can it help us free up so that way we can allot our mental resources elsewhere. Technology can free up certain aspects like that. Is it one step closer to achieving divinity, maybe? Who knows? Like, if one day we are able to stop worrying about the physicalities of the world, like in a very crude sense in the future, like WALL-E, for example. Have you seen WALL-E?
I didn't see that one. Now I'm bummed because I want you to be able to talk about wherever you were going to go.
I can kind of, a dystopia, if you will, where floating chairs, you can get food at a moment's notice. It's like humanity's living on this big space cruise ship, essentially, and everything is catered to their needs.
Okay.
And they are all relaxing. They all seem to be enjoying life. Of course, in WALL-E, they're all depicted as, very unhealthy just because they don't really work. They don't walk around. Their chair carries them everywhere. Food's brought to them. They're still alive, but and there's still people, but it's like, is that what we consider humanity? Is that what we consider, you know, do we appreciate the struggle? Do we appreciate the lack of opportunities presented to us? Um, but with Wally, it depicted people as very lazy when everything was catered to them,
Hmm.
and nothing else was really trying to be achieved except for relaxation. And why my question for divinity is, if we're able to not worry about some other things, are we able to focus on like the spiritual aspects of our lives? If you think about like the pyramid of hierarchical needs,
Hmm.
you need food,
Yep.
shelter, water, the basis.
Yep.
Once that's taken care of, what's the next thing to worry about? Social, I believe it's like social, talking to other people, maintaining friendships and relationships for like community.
Hmm.
And then up near the top is like spiritualness and divinity. I'm pretty sure if you were to pull it up, you'd be able to see it. But once all those other needs are taken care of, what's left up here?
Self-actualization.
Self-actualization. Yeah, I think you can agree with this. There's not a lot of people out there in the world that can kind of. There's not a lot of philosophers. There's not a lot of people trying to understand. I would say there are, but you don't see it as much in terms of just the general populace that are trying to understand their purpose of being here. Why the way things are the way that they are, stuff like that. And that's what I think, and I hope that we will be able to reach one day with our conveniences being met, and hopefully not succumbing to just relaxing and no progression whatsoever. But we can't really control that on a mass scale. That's just a way of the natural flow of the human race in general.
You know what's funny about? I'm having a few light bulb moments as you were talking about this. In March, just this last March, the last 30 days, I have probably worked the hardest in my life, slept the least, and I've never been happier.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was because, again, the overanalyst in me, I did not want my work to think that this podcast was going to get in the way of anything. And so we have certain metrics that they measure us by for productivity reasons. And I wanted to make sure not only that I met those metrics, but I went significantly over. So I was putting in a higher quality of work and not more time. It wasn't time, but when I was working for those 8 hours, I made sure that I was being as efficient as possible. No one asked me to do that. No one has, no one has said, oh, is this going to get in the way? It was just me wanting to sort of show my bosses, I guess, that I can do this and it's fine. But it's interesting that you brought up the people where their food were being brought to them and their chairs sort of take them everywhere, because when I think about that, that does not sound like my ideal. My ideal when I get off work for the day is not to be able to walk over to the couch, DoorDash a meal, and then to be able to sit, have my food. I'm trying to think of like what's the closest that reality would look like today in 2023. That would not make me anywhere near as happy as I have been meeting new people, creating this thing. And I didn't even have any metrics yet. I was at my height happiness, not knowing if it would all be for nothing. I don't know if this is going to make me a buck. I don't know if anybody's going to listen, but I was having that self-actualization of seeing where I could go, where my talents could take me, what potential did I have. I think we were talking about off camera, but even the frustration of getting this up and running, of figuring out the editing software. There is one particular day where we recorded for almost 2 hours, and at the very end, the camera crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And the editing software fortunately captured the audio and the video, but it captured it as two separate tracks. And so if I took anything out of the audio, the video wasn't catching up, and so then the lips weren't adjusted. And I was trying to combine the two, and I was on like my fifth attempt, and I went to test it, and I hit play, and it didn't work, and I yelled, "What the fuck?" And I slammed my fist down on the table as hard as I could. And even in those moments, like looking back at March, like it was still a moment of learning, and someone might, think like, "Oh, who cares? He figured it out." Like for me, I figured it out on my own. I was here at night, and walking away from it, And now knowing that that video is fully edited and I'm ready to put it out into the universe, like I am very proud of the fact that I did that with no one's help. So that is just my rant to say that I think that there is an interesting correlation behind the fact that March was my least laziest month of my life, and I've never been happier.
I have noticed a correlation. Anytime I've heard someone describe about themselves being the happiest that they've ever been, there's almost always a correlation of they've been doing new things, they've been pushing boundaries, they've been staying busy. Those seem to be commonplace amongst people who seem to openly exclaim that they are happy. I'm pretty sure you can agree. I don't know how old are you?
35.
35?
Yourself?
I'm 27,
Okay.
coming up to 28. Up until 25, that's when your brain is developing. Everything in the world, I mean, as you grow throughout time, everything in the world seems to be new to you up until a certain point, which is usually around that age of 25. You kind of have a good understanding of the way how people are and they act, their motives, the reasons for things, the objects in this world. You know, when you're younger, everything almost seems new to you because it is.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that could be like that. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that could be like that. And your brain's constantly developing neuron pathways because of those new experiences up until around the age of 25. And I feel like just because that's where the main growth stops with the brain doesn't mean that you can't still develop like more neural pathways. In my personal observation, it seems that, things that stand out to you, you can easily remember in life. Shocking events, big events, the more memorable events are probably something that was something crazy that happened to you. Whereas like, that one time I went to the bathroom and, and I washed my hands, I can remember on day, the 13th of February in 2012, you don't remember that. It's not as impacting of a thing because you've already observed going to the bathroom X amount of times. It's another process that, like, tying your shoes, some other thing that you do on a normal basis, on a day-to-day basis that you just don't even think about anymore. It's a natural place. Your brain doesn't have to try and create, again, you don't have to challenge yourself to create a neural pathway for you to overachieve this problem. It's no longer a problem to you because you know how to deal with it.
Right.
So the moment that we stop putting ourselves into those situations to learn about something and force growth in our neurons, in our brain, it's I think that's where the decay part comes, because if we the brain will automate things when it can to save on mental resources. And if you just find yourself in a spot where your brain's just automated for life and you're just, you'll find yourself, I can speak on this because I'm not paying attention to life as much and it's starting to go by a lot faster. If you've noticed, when you're in a routine and a process, time just seems to go by just like that.
Yes.
And it's crazy. I don't like that. I want to keep enjoying life at a nice, decent pace, and I feel like one of the few ways to do that is to keep creating those new experiences, so that way each moment that's something that you've pushed yourself out of a comfortable zone, it will stand out to you and will be more cemented rather than just like you walking down this path that you've walked down several times. You decided to go walk down this other path.
Yeah.
Oh, new stuff. Neurons firing,
Yes.
more creation,
Yes.
stuff like that. And I feel like that's the thing that people are missing with a lot of development and growth. It's just, it ties into that, pushing the envelope.
Do you happen to listen to the podcast Modern Wisdom?
Nope.
This is fantastic because they had an episode that was, I wish I could reference the episode so if people wanted to listen they could, but the title was something around the effect of how to make your life last longer, and they literally just said what you just said, which is essentially that if your day is very habit driven, I wake up, I brush my teeth, I go to work, I go to the gym, I go to bed, your days are going to fly by. But if you've had a day that's full of very unique experiences, I had a friend that came out from California, I took some time off work, and there is one day, for example, where we went on a 12-mile bike ride, rented a couple bikes, went to a restaurant that we had never been to before, went to a jazz club that night, and when we got home and we were talking about the day, it almost felt like, was the bike ride this morning? That was just today? Holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
And if your day feels like it's very, very long, more than likely, if you then reflect on what you did that day, there is probably a lot of unique, or at least there is something unique. Maybe not the entire day. That example I gave was extreme because it was from when we woke up to when we went to bed, things we don't normally do. But there have even been days where I'll just work out in the morning. But to your point, when you were talking about taking a different path, they even suggested that if you are going to work, if you don't have a work from home job, take a different path. Even if it puts 5, 10, 15 minutes onto your commute, seeing a different part of your city, it does something for your brain where it starts firing off those neurons like where you were just saying, and it makes your life feel a little bit more unique, brings a lot more satisfaction and happiness. And so their sort of life hack from this 2-hour podcast was think about your daily routine and what can you just switch up as small as your commute that will make life a little more interesting for you.
You know, something just clicked in my head. It makes sense also too with the happiness and the trying new things and like all that stuff. It explains why people are tired because think back to when you were in school. So if you were learning a lot, were you ever sleepy whenever you were learning a lot? Like in the class, you're like, okay, you know, learn a lot. And you're like, okay, and like I'm sleepy. I can't wait to sleep and all that other stuff after learning. At least for me and a few other people that I ever brought this up to is that, you know, why are you sleepy in school? You're learning a lot of information. You're spending energy, quite literally energy, to learn something. And then you go home, you sleep, you cement what you learned to a degree, and you come and apply it the next day, learn a little bit more, cement that stuff, so on and so forth. The fact that you keep pushing boundaries, you're still creating those neurons, you're cementing those, you know, those memories, those experiences, and that's probably explains why people find themselves, oh, I'm just tired all the time. I think that's the thing that kind of clicked for me, is that that's probably why they're tired all the time, is that they keep generating, you know, those pathways up there. I think
it's funny you brought up something earlier, and I'm trying to remember what you said, but I'll just start talking about it. Maybe it'll come back to me. A friend of mine, one of our guests, her name was Hidea, and she was talking about how she thinks she's depressed, but she doesn't notice because she's too busy. She's like, I'm so busy between my 2 jobs, going to the gym, trying to squeeze in some sleep, da-da-da-da-da. You know, there's your solution. If you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're stressed, according to her, just get busy, stop being stagnant, like what you were talking about earlier, and just get life moving forward. You don't need to come up with the solution to why did my boyfriend or girlfriend break up with me? Why did my boss fire me? Don't worry about the solution. Just what can you do to keep life moving forward? Can you go to the gym? Can you go apply to 5 jobs? Do something other than sit on the couch, watch the TV, DoorDash a meal, and think about all the problems you're having in your life.
Yeah.
Because then they'll just fester, and you're allowing room for the problem to get bigger as you overanalyze it and worry about it and stress about it.
Idle hands are the devil's plaything, whatever the saying is. But
idle hands are the devil's playground.
Something along those lines. It might be.
Yes, I've heard yes. Such one of those good, just quick little nuggets of wisdom. Agreed.
Because I'm pretty sure you can attest to this too, especially during the pandemic. Oh my goodness, the amount of momentum I lost after I got out of the military and went to school, and then being forced to stay shut inside. Because I remember being in school at the time.
Where were you?
Full Sail in Florida.
Okay.
And I'm going to the school, meeting new people, interacting, have a great old time. Pandemic. You know, you're gonna go to online school. This is the only thing that you know, and you know. Hey, you really can't go out and get any food. Maybe you can go and get groceries, but do you want to go deal with that stress? Do you want to deal with that hassle and go and get groceries? You can just DoorDash.
You might die. Because you're going to have to wear your mask.
Yeah.
You're going to see the pasta is out, and that's going to cause you stress.
Yeah. And for the longest time, I basically had like a whole year off where it's like little to no physical workout because I didn't really do that when I was stuck in that little hole. And just schooling helped keep me busy, but otherwise, you know, I'm playing video games, I'm ordering food, and that became routine.
Yeah.
And the fact that I let it become routine too, especially with all the other factors at that time, I think that's why so many people struggled, is that like they were coerced into this little hole that they had to operate in, and it really showed if you were able to, you know, overcome that in other unique ways, or if you were dependent on external factors outside of your little environment. And I've been slowly trying to build that, you know, back up, trying to get more out and about, doing more things. I'm always going to be a gamer, so I don't think that's ever going to leave me. But I still like to incorporate it as part of a balance.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get that momentum back. It really is, and that's why I always keep, I keep saying it. It's just maintain your momentum.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to pick back up. But once you get back up there, like you can easily see the correlation of your actions and what they do and how they make your body feel, as opposed to that little stagnancy, if you will. Because looking back on it now, I could see and I could feel the rot that was happening
Yes.
in there, and it is not a place that I would like to go back to. I wouldn't say it's depression, but it's a sense of lack of accomplishment of things, if there's a better way to describe it like that.
I'm trying to remember the word, but I was in the same boat. You know, when I got let go from my job, it was middle of April 2020. Actually, I think it was late April, because I remembered they held on to us longer than there's thousands of layoffs happening, and we were still employed, and then finally it happened, and we were unemployed as well. First 2 to 4 weeks were almost fun, because I would have been 32 at the time, and I had been in a full-time job since I was 18 years old, and at some points juggling a full-time job with full-time school, and then graduated school, went into a job where we were working up to 80 hours a week, up to 6 months a year. Left that job. Point being, I never really had a break. So at first it was just like, oh, this feels nice.
Yeah, that's
About a month in, I started going nuts,
Mhm.
and it ceased being nice.
yeah, that's basically how it was too. Is that like I had all this other stuff going on, and then he was like, oh man, I just all this leisure time.
game.
Yeah, all this leisure time. I don't have to focus about being anywhere because I'm forced to stay inside. It felt like, I was out of a sort of captivity in a sense.
In a sense.
And then only to find out this is captivity, and it's an inhibition on just the human experience in general. With so much leisure time, like I felt as less like, okay, I miss working. I miss, of course, aside from the money aspect, yeah, everyone misses making money.
Yeah.
But it's like I just miss the light stress, I guess, if you want to call it. Just working in general. It's something that I craved like 6 months into the pandemic. It's just like I really should, get back out there and try working again. Because after I finished school and stuff, that's where some more leisure time, because I had some financial allotment set aside for, being able to pay for the rent and all that other stuff. That's what I wanted to do after the military. It's like, I want to take a break from the military. I don't want to work, focus on school after that. And then I was like, okay, I'm things are starting to hurt a little bit. I should probably, start working again too. And then I worked at Chipotle after the military, after graduating from college. Where's the first place I go? Chipotle. And then that kind of hit me in a weird way, sort of humbled myself. But
Was
it
that
didn't.
partly due to the pandemic? What month and year did you graduate?
It was like either June or July of 21.
What was your major in?
It was what is it? Recording arts.
Recording arts. And when you chose that major, what was your original thought? What were you going to do with that?
Music industry, sound design, something like that.
Yeah.
The dream job was to work for musicians or alongside musicians and create music, and then sound design for gaming, or like Foley, a Foley artist, making my own sounds for like a movie or TV show or whatever you have it. But and you come to find out that most people in the audio field do audio visuals. So things like, projectors, speakers, microphones, events, and that's usually kind of what it rotates around. And it didn't bother me, really, to find out that reality. I came to terms with it. I was like, okay, I even acknowledged it before. It's like, that's a dream position to do. Everyone has their own ideal of a dream job in a sense, but in reality, audio visuals is what it was. But my current job in audio visuals, it works really nicely. I'm still able to have a little fun time, experience some, still learning stuff in that field, in that area. So I'm sorry, I'm trailing off from my thought process. I don't know.
No, it's okay. I'm going to completely change the subject.
That's fine.
Your tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
Any great, fun, interesting stories behind one or two of them?
I'll start with my more recent one. This one right here, the 11/8. So time signatures. Are you familiar with time signatures?
No, I'm not.
So let's say, for example, your average song is in like 4/4, 4 beats.
Oh, yes, I am.
Yeah.
11/8's a time signature?
Yes. Any number could be a time signature. It really depends on how it's arranged. That's the lovely thing about music. It's like it's math. It's just basically math. So you know, that's like a 4.
Uh-huh.
And then 11/8, something like, I can't recreate it right now, but it sounds off.
Where you're going with it.
Yeah,
So,
I found that most of the music that I like to listen to is 11/8, and that time signature is, initially it sounds very off. Something's wrong with this piece of music.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this piece of music? And then you look at it more, and it's like, okay, it still sounds like music. It's still doing something, it's still grooving, but it's like, where's it going? What's it doing? Why does it sound off? And then you understand the concept of it, of like, the mathematicalness of it, and you kind of, when you listen to the whole song, like, okay, that makes sense, because the whole song was structured on that, because the brain recognizes patterns, right?
Yeah.
So once you can see the bigger pattern, because that's usually, you need a bigger pattern to see that in like fruitful action. But it has like a weird kind of like sort of like a little ebb and flow.
Is there any genre of music that it primarily is in? What genre?
I've seen it like math rock, psychedelic rock. Are you familiar with Tool?
Is that a band?
Mm-hmm. It's sort of like grungy in a little bit. They like to deal with odd time signatures, philosophical lyrics, what have you. They stand out.
Good gym music?
I would say so.
Tool?
I would recommend listening to Tool, like all of their discography. They've matured really well over time, but that's not literally worship, but that's a band that I worship. Is most of the music just has like it hits you in a weird way with the lyrics. All the instruments are like doing their own thing, but they weave in and out of each other,
Yeah.
while still maintaining the composure of a song. Like, you have the drummer doing some like crazy thing, and the guitarist is probably doing something that doesn't sound on beat with the drums, but it pairs well with it. And it's the pairing that I really appreciate, because the singer, his name is Maynard James Keenan, he will kind of dance around the instruments. And if you ever see him live, he doesn't like to be up front when he's singing. He's usually in the back, in the like where the lights aren't shining. Okay. But you can kind of see him like going like that, like along to the music. He's on his own groove, but I find myself kind of moving to that in the similar ways that he does whenever I'm listening to the music too. And it's almost like a puzzle to listen to, because well, that's the thing with music. If you can recognize a pattern, you can sing along and have a great time.
Right.
But those types of songs, especially their most recent album, their average song length is about 10 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, for the newer album. Like older ones, it's like 5 to 8 minutes kind of, for their older music. But the recent album people didn't like, just because it was, well, no, they still liked it, but it wasn't as well received just because of the length. And it feels so wonderful, to me at least, to be able to know, and I've listened to the song over and over and over, and I learned bits by bit of it. And so it's like one listen, I'll probably want to listen and hum a lot or tap a lot to the drums. The other part, I'll probably want to like hum along to the guitar. Or other times it's like, I feel like singing, the part. Yeah. So it's like, each listen I could do a particular focus if I wanted to on a certain instrument, and it would be its own groove, but the whole groove overall was the more beautiful thing that I appreciated. And so that's why I like 11/8, just because it's all chaos.
Yep.
It's all chaos, but it's managed chaos, and it's, it all comes together in its own lovely way that I like. And that's what I like about life. It all comes together in its own. If you look at it in the big picture, we're doing fine. We're doing great as the human race. We're adapting.
Yeah.
So that's, again, you can see the ties to my life philosophies and all that stuff.
I'm excited because the last 2 weeks in particular, I have been needing new gym music.
Mhm.
I've been listening to a lot of Bring Me the Horizon, and that. Do you know who that is by chance?
Mhm.
A lot of them, and a lot of Bring Me the Horizon radio, and then within that radio station, if there's a band I like, I'll switch over to their radio, hoping it. But I've been doing so much. They're not punk rock. What category would you put them in?
I would probably say along like I don't even know if emo is
You could
a
call them like
genre.
emo rock, maybe.
Sort of like scene rock, alt rock, punky. Not necessarily punky. Within that realm,
Yeah,
I would say new metal, maybe. That's the
Maybe.
new metal was Linkin Park though,
But
but
people, you know what's funny is a few people have described them as a modern day Linkin Park, so I guess you could call them new metal.
I haven't followed them enough to speak on like modern day stuff. So I'm only familiarized with like their when I knew them initially when they were first around, was my younger years.
But yeah, no, I'm excited because I just been listening to the gym music, and the gym music is not always the best. It gives me the opportunity to do more observing and listening to what's happening around me as far as like what people are talking about. And I've actually met one of the guests specifically because I wasn't wearing headphones. If I had been, he may have not said something to me, and then we may have never recorded together. So there's some benefits I think to not always wearing headphones in the gym. But I also like getting introduced to new. Someone introduced me to Bring Me the Horizon, and then I obsessively listened to them for like a year and a half until I got sick of them. So maybe Tool will be the next one that I obsessively listen to for the next year and a half. We'll see.
The community really does seem to be focused on like philosophy and like intricacy and appreciation of life and the divine, whatever that may be. One of the lyrics is "Ride the spiral till the end. It may just go where no one's been." The song was written with a. Are you familiar with the Fibonacci sequence?
The what?
The Fibonacci.
I don't think so.
If you wanted to pull it up, you could for like a nice little visual. It's basically it's a mathematical equation, a ratio, if you will. Like it's called like the golden ratio. It's found a lot in a lot of life. So say for example, like if it was placed in the middle of, say for example, something that had curvature on it, the spiral would come out and kind of align with it in a way. But the way that the lyrics are mainly interpreted by people is that the middle of that spiral is the start of your life. It is up to you to ever keep expanding out as you go around and around, and that is the journey of life.
Okay.
And ride the spiral till the end. But I can recommend some starter songs to see if it's something that you'd like or not. But that's one thing that I highly appreciate.
Give it to us in case someone listening to this is thinking the exact same thing. What would your top like 2 or 3 starter songs be?
Let's go with 3. Top 3 songs would be Lateralis, Lateralus. The other one is Pneuma, which is I think Greek for air or breath. Pnuema, Pneuma. And then
I spelled that N-E-W-M-A.
yeah.
So phonetically. Pneuma.
Pneuma.
N-E-W-M-U-G-H.
Yeah.
Pneuma.
I'm pretty sure it would come up.
I'd find it eventually.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Number 3. Let me see. I'm trying to think of a different album. Oh, Rosetta Stoned. Yeah, Rosetta Stoned.
Perfect.
And I think that one's about like the thing is that these songs are never explicitly stated about what they are, what they mean, but people say it's either about being abducted by aliens, some guy on a lot of drugs, or who knows, maybe it's both. But his experience of being abducted and him relaying that basically, oh man, I have all this wonderful knowledge that these aliens are telling me, but I didn't bring my pen. Fuck, that's literally. So, and then he wakes up later and he supposedly shit the bed, So it's like, did it really happen? Who knows?
Yeah.
But to him, what he experienced, was this bountiful bits of knowledge that he was unable to share, unfortunately. So it's like, fuck, missed opportunity. Speaking along the lines of music, though, another tattoo, though, Slipknot.
I know them.
Yes. I don't know if you want me to do anything. I can go like
There
that.
we go. There we
Yeah.
go.
But that one, the verse was, if you're 555, then I'm 666. And just because I liked Slipknot and I liked, I wanted to find like one verse that kind of played well into it. I was like, okay, that's cool. That's like a nice little symbol that could be attributed to my love and appreciation for Slipknot and their songs and their lyrics. But come to find out, this is what I like about my personal experiences with life in general. It just so happens that this is an angel number. Angel numbers are usually like represented by single digits repeated like 3 times. So you'd see like 111 would represent something, 999 would represent something. This one represents times of significant change, I believe. 555. So
A quantum leap is ahead. Embrace yourself for massive shifts. Be open to new opportunities in all areas of your life.
what a coincidence after all the stuff that I talked about in my life philosophies
Right.
and how that works out.
What a coincidence.
What a
And
coincidence.
you have that tattooed on your left arm.
What a coincidence. So I'm just like, things are just clicking for me left and right in terms of, letting life sort of figure itself out and solve itself. But I liked how that came together
Yeah.
with, like, it was completely unintentional. And that was the beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you had no idea what it was, what it meant, or that
Outside of that,
meanings.
yeah, outside of the initial context.
Right.
Yeah. But the I guess extra layers makes it really cool. Let's see. Yeah, then there's like a whole bunch of other things. The typical like heart on your sleeve. Wear your heart on your sleeve.
I like that.
It's supposed to be a little bit of barbed wire because I put myself out there, but sometimes I get hurt a little more than, by doing that.
Right.
If you've ever heard of Kingdom Hearts,
The game. Yep.
yeah, Kingdom Hearts, right there. Friendship is power, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And then I think you've already seen, but like the whole like
Yep.
the stag, like not coward, courage, like protection.
Coward.
Yeah, courage, protection, and loyalty. I try to have things on me. I initially restrained from using words, just because I liked representation. I liked symbolism, and that's one thing that I appreciated. But then I got a quote on my back, in omnia paratus, which means ready for anything in Latin. Got it from Gilmore Girls. Never watched Gilmore Girls, but that's apparently where it was used from and known from. But then I was like, okay, I'll start putting numbers and letters.
Switch it up a little bit.
Yeah.
What are you ready for anything? How does one be ready for anything?
You don't plan.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it does.
My whole life is planned out.
Yeah.
I mean, to a certain, not literally. I like to be. Probably part of the reason I get a real big dopamine hit off of being spontaneous is because I plan so much.
I generally have a big framework that I like to plan within. So yes, I will still make plans, but for the most part, where most people overanalyze and think about every little detail and plan. Some people plan it down to like a T, like from every small little interaction. Like that's, if they don't do that, sometimes for some people like it falls apart for them. And if you expect something to go this way, and if it doesn't go that way, you're going to be decimated. You're going to be hurt. You're going to be upset at yourself or whatever caused, your plans to not go according to how you wanted them to. But with loose framework, when something doesn't go as the way you wanted it,
It's fine.
that's life. That's fine. Hey, pick yourself back up, dust yourself off. Let's go for the next thing. And hey, if it does work out, then hey, good on you. You won that dice roll that we call life. You got that little interaction. And if you can, I found the joy in life is being able to accept that framework and let it, the ebb and flow of things either coming my way or not coming my way, working out for me, not working out for me. And it's a hard one to create when you're used to stressing on the little or on the smaller details, at least speaking for myself.
Yeah. I think I'm getting better at being somewhere in the middle. Because I definitely do not get derailed when things don't go according to plan. So I'm getting better at it. But being spontaneous is so much fun. Even yesterday, someone hit me up, and I wasn't able to take his call. Gave him a call back about 30 minutes later, and he was essentially just like, "Hey, it's Friday. Both of our work days are technically not over, but can you escape from the office and let's go grab some food or a drink or something?" It sounded super fun. I love moments like that. So spontaneously, spontaneity is something I need to do more because it does make me very happy. But that being said, I'm going to switch gears again. You want to swap some stories?
Sure.
Okay. You want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
How about I go first? I've done a lot of talking already. I feel like maybe we can give
Oh,
you
you're
some.
gonna give me one
Yeah.
first. Perfect. Okay.
Let me see. These are the ones I pulled up from the side. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Since we're on the topic of growth, somewhat, I was never the same after.
I
That's
was
that one.
never the same after. I was never the same after I was with my first guy.
Mm-hmm.
So there is like a 5 year gap between uh, a time when I wanted to find out if I was gay or not. So I
Mm-hmm.
hooked up with a lady, and it didn't go well. But it did confirm my suspicions. I was like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, cool, I like dudes.
Yeah.
But there's a several year gap where I never acted on it because I was terrified of essentially what the fallout would be. And then I came out of the closet several years later, and shortly after that, I downloaded Grindr and I invited a guy over, and he gave me a blowjob, and it was like the funnest night of my
Mm-hmm.
life.
The spontaneousness.
Up until that point, obviously I've had better encounters since then, and random blowjobs in the middle of a Tuesday evening are not my deal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt so right. And so after that, it's almost like a huge burden came off, because I think during those couple of years, I still wasn't really sure, or maybe I hadn't convinced myself.
Mm-hmm.
But then as soon as he came over and when he left, I was just like, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, definitely never been the same since that moment.
Yeah, I've been sort of on a similar journey too. I'm a very lustful person. I won't disacknowledge that. I always appreciate I just the whole experience in general. But I found myself in some experiences with a man, and they were particularly when I was drinking, and
Okay.
I was like, okay, yeah, I would like to at least once not be inebriated to have a more pure experience.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that kind of, still haven't gotten there yet. But it's like a slow journey. Especially I'm in a relationship. I've already told her about this, this thing, and it was a little bit of growth too in terms of kind of coming to a realization is like, sure, it's okay if you like the same sex. Where we are in life with this stuff, people are more accepting of that with any type of lifestyle nowadays.
Yeah.
We're more encouraging of pursuing your own, you pursuing your own happiness in a way. But I've been on a similar experience basically, and I'm still trying to figure out where in terms of that is on like the whole spectrum of what less than sexual experiences are for the human in general.
Yeah.
So trying to find our own little place in all of that has been a journey as well.
I think regardless of where humanity is at with it, my when I look back on my 35 years, but specifically on my sexuality, is that no matter what the world thinks about it, you've got to find a way to accept yourself.
Yeah.
Because I hated myself for a really long time. So even if let's say a gay man had completely equal rights and no one sneered when they heard that I was gay, take out all, if I still hated myself,
You
I would
live with
still
yourself.
be in a very miserable
Yeah.
place in life. And so I do think people need to, I really hope, and it's not just being gay. It's everyone. I think everyone has an aspect of themselves they're trying to reconcile with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a woman. I'm black. I'm too young. My whatever it is. And that's one thing too that I really hope comes out of this podcast is that people hear something from someone that's a little bit older or maybe had a realization, and they can start to have that belief of like, oh, Alex got there. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get there too. There's some proof. There's some evidence.
People
that,
need to see examples
Yeah.
in a sense. And if you yourself, because you live with yourself, I live with myself, anyone lives with themselves. If you can't come to terms with who you are and, come to that truth with yourself, and you're constantly with yourself, I keep framing it as if you're with another person, because if you can't be truthful with those around you and stuff, people can tell. And if you can't be truthful with yourself, it's like you're self-imposing that onto yourself. And being able to I mean, at the end of the day, like, who gives a fuck whatever the person next door or across the way, thinks about your life? It's like they're not living your life.
Right.
You're living your life. It's working well for you. You're not, you're not in a bad spot. You're not like financially poor, whatever the factor is. Like, it's all your life. And if you can't, within the respectful confines of civilization,
Yeah.
if you can't be who you are, that's the battle that everyone faces on their own, with or without assistance.
Yeah. Okay, story time for you.
Nice.
The last time I got lost in a great adventure.
Great adventure. See, that's the thing, especially with my sparse memory.
Anything from Japan?
Actually, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people liked about Japan, at least in the military, for going there. Every night that you went out felt like an adventure, just because it was like a new experience out there. Like, it's like being young again. Almost everything is new. The only thing that's familiar is the concept of humanity and people, and what you know about people in general. That's it. Like, yeah, they all eat, they all live, they all drive. What's the culture like? What is this weird thing? What's this store? What do they sell? What are these people eating? What do people like to do for leisure time over there? Like, there's so much new stuff out there in just a different country. Like, you could literally, I think that's the wonderful thing about traveling, and that's why it's a recommended, like, you should go out there and travel.
Yeah.
And just get lost. I'm pretty sure you've heard that too. Like, go out there and get lost. I mean, yeah, have a GPS, have a way to get back, but like, don't plot someplace where you're gonna go out there and, yeah, I'm just gonna go here and just go back. That's it. Like, try to get lost along the way. Look, like, it's the whole stop and smell the roses thing. You're going along this path. Oh, what's that store? That my attention was brought to that. Oh, this thing. Check it out. Kind of get lost along the way, so that way, like, the unexpected will catch you off guard, but it will also, could be serotonin, could be dopamine. I always try to think of things in a literal sense, whatever's chemicals being released when you do stuff like that. But I think that's why why it was very memorable, is because of the new experiences. Also made it very fun to figure out something again.
Yeah.
For the first time. And we don't get many opportunities like that, which is why it makes sense, the hypothetical of living forever. Okay, you've experienced everything, you still can't die. Now what? Are you just sad and depressed and nothing's new, and then eternity will pass by just like that? And I think that's also kind of plays a good part as to, maybe there should be a cap on how long we can live, know?
I heard this phrase recently that I think it's a culture somewhere in Asia, and I'm kicking myself that I can't remember specifically where right now. But they have a phrase in their language that basically says, you don't get old. When you stop learning, you're old. Something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that phrase. I also was thinking about, when you were talking about getting lost, moving to Austin was a real interesting experience, because growing up in Sacramento my whole life, I almost never used my maps. I could get anywhere. Even if someone told me, if I was going somewhere I hadn't been before, but someone told me it's near the Golden One Stadium, I could get 98% there on my own without having to look it up.
Mm.
Being in Austin, I don't know where anything is, so I've been very reliant on my GPS, but there have been a couple times too when I'm not in a rush to get somewhere. I'll think, okay, let's try to get there by memory, and I'll leave the phone, in the dash, and until I'm like really, really lost, or I'm starting to get frustrated because now I've been going for like 20 minutes. I'm like, how far off the path have I got?
Mm-hmm.
At some point I'll get out the phone. But there are also too, going back to just like really easy dopamine hits, the few times that I have gone through, blindly, and I actually got to where I was going, even if I took a few missed turns, it felt sort of cool. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, sweet. I'm finally starting to get to know the town a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been trying to think of like some other, I don't know, to me it doesn't sound grand, for like, something like that. That's why I was trying to think of some big adventure, but I don't think nothing really comes to mind in terms of like a super big adventure. But there was always friends that were made along the way.
Yeah.
As
Do you keep in touch with with anyone from your time in the Marines?
Yes. I have a small group. I think everyone does usually like that. They've found sanctuary in one way or another, because there's a unique bond that's created, at least speaking for the Marine Corps. I can't speak on the other branches, but it does seem to be commonplace for those in the military to develop strong bonds, because you all realize that you're in the shit together, everything sucks together, but once you're able to do something with someone else, it's not as shitty, you know? And that's all that it really comes down to. Think of anything shitty, as long as you had someone there to like shoot, have some banter with, shoot the
Yes.
shit, or like whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's literally companionship. That's all that, people really need to kind of have a healthy function. It's someone to sharpen your blade against time to time too, just in general. But the thing about the military is that, like, yeah, I'll do that. It's like that everyone has your back. Almost everyone has your back, because it needs to get done, and no one else is going to do it but you. And if you can't do it, someone else will be there to help pick you up, in a sense, and carry you along. It's sort of like a fostered type of mentality. The whole no man gets left behind mentality doesn't have to be as extreme as like leaving them out in the battlefield, but it carries down.
We all go through, when you're talking about, how you go through shitty situations together, and that's what brings that sense of camaraderie, is that when you think about humans in general, we all have the exact same negative emotions that we go through, be it stress, depression, anxiety, and many more that I'm not thinking of at the moment. But I wonder if we just looked at everyone that we pass by on the streets as, we're all going through the shit together. Maybe not right now. Like today I'm having a pretty good day. My finances are in order. I got to meet you. It's beautiful outside, but tomorrow, in a week, in a month, like I will be going through something. And I think that, we all have this common factor, and we're not that different from each other. And I think if we could somehow keep that in mind, there's a stupid thing I was thinking about the other day. I was at the dog park when I first got back, and I'm sitting there on the bench, and I'm looking at all these different dogs play together, and they are all different, different genders, different sizes, different fur colors, different breeds. Like him, I don't even know what he is. I've had people guess 12 different breeds. Some people think he's primarily pit bull, some think dachshund, some think
He's just
Chihuahua.
a little guy.
He's just a little guy.
Yeah.
He's my little guy. But I'm sitting there on the bench thinking, like, why is it that all these dogs can get along and like humanity can't?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that these creatures have where they can just show up at this park? And I think part of the reason I enjoy taking him to the park is there's just this feeling of like serenity and harmony there amongst the animals, as you see them all do their thing and get along and sniff each other's butts, and some of them are just napping, and some of them are doing their own thing, and all of them are just content. And I've wondered, like, is the common thing that we also need to remind ourselves is, like, the dogs aren't looking at any of those external factors that I mentioned: age, fur color, breed. They're just all looking to be happy and have a good time. And are humans that much different? Are we all not just chasing some sense of happiness and trying to have a good time, and trying to feel fulfilled and trying to feel like we have purpose? And I don't know, man. I think that we almost overcomplicate it, and if we could just boil it down to, like, we both feel stress and we're both chasing happiness, and we're pretty similar in that respect. Could some of those barriers to entry of friendship and harmony be a little easier for us?
That's one of my dreams for humanity. It's along the lines of divinity. I hope one day that we all come together, and it just in whatever way. The fact that we segregate ourselves in numerous ways. We have cliques, we have groups. Everyone wants a sense of community. It's just a matter of how big of a community do you want that? And of course, it's harder to maintain a bigger community, because with a bigger community, you have, in a world of a melting pot, we have all these ideals that are, we are slowly becoming the melting pot. Right now, we're still that block of cheese that's still kind of melting right now. That's where we are with humanity. With the internet came up and phones, we are putting our cheese into this pot right now, and it's being cooked as we speak right now. And we're still dealing with the stressors of all these communities intermingling with each other. And as time goes on, we are having people currently raised in this age of the internet, where everything is accessible. No, almost everything is accessible. China. The where we're learning about each other's cultures and all that stuff, and which is why it's encouraged for people to go out, so that way you can see the correlations. What makes humanity, what makes people people.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about Japan, is that I could see common things amongst the different cultures, which allows me to speak more on like the basis of what people are in general, rather than just like I can only speak for Americans. I've been in like also like the Philippines. I think that's the extent of it. Like I've been to at least 2 other countries, and plan to see more. But being able to see all those other types of correlations, I think, is what will make humanity's bond stronger with itself. Is giving ourselves time to process all this new stuff that's. No one likes to be told that what they know is different or wrong, or doesn't match with what someone else believes in, which is why religions they are conflicting, which is why different political beliefs are conflicting, is because everyone is their own hero of their story, and everyone, what they know up here is correct, true, and factual, and I want to be able to tell people the true facts about what I know. I share this information with someone. You don't agree with the truths that I've come to discover? What are you talking about? Confusion, anger, that you can't convey a point or help someone see it the way you see it. And this is why it's sort of like a discipline to like recognize someone's different types of, mentalities, where they are. But that's what I'm hoping to look for in the future. I mean, we're seeing it. It's just a little bit by bit. It's such a slow process, but we always want to mud things up and make them difficult and confusing. But I feel like in the generations to come, probably before we die, we'll see a lot more unity in this world than we have been.
Do you think this could kill 2 very big birds with one stone here? If everyone just traveled the planet, that would make humanity better. Not like the whole planet, but I mean like me, as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that the only time I've left the US was to go to Mexico. It was somewhere I forget the name of the city, but it was maybe 90 minutes south of the border.
Tijuana?
So, it wasn't Tijuana. But regardless, I want to consider myself as like I feel like I can't even really say I left the country. I basically put my foot over the border.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've left the country, so technically I have.
I'm enlightened,
We were in an Airbnb. It was very secluded. It was on a beach, so we never really went into the city because we had like an on-site volleyball court. We basically just stayed at the home the entire time. But, do you think if someone was to go to Africa for a month, to go to Europe for a month, to go to Japan for a month, to go to Australia, wherever the destination is, and spend a couple weeks there, coming back home, seeing Earth from someone else's perspective and getting ingrained in that culture for X amount of time, that in and of itself could help us get one step closer to that place of divinity that you've been talking about?
If everyone could do it, it would have already been done. Finances hold us back. Lots of other things hold us back. So,
Right.
In theory, yes. I feel like it's all about perspective, because people can't really understand something unless they've been in a similar situation. You can't understand and learn from a financial hardship if you've never been in a financial hardship. You can't understand what it's like to struggle in a relationship if you've never gone more than 6 months. A thing I can personally attest to, because my average one would last about 6 months, and then the current one that I'm in right now is one that I've pushed myself to understand what makes a relationship, what makes love, what is love, and to just see things from a different perspective. And that's, most of the time, that's the hard thing for people in general, is that I'm always right up here. What I know is what everyone should know or does know. And, I me speaking for someone else, I'm incapable of putting myself into someone else's perspective unless shown how to do that properly, or to try and empathize or sympathize. And I feel like the introduction of the internet has kind of made that a very big tool in terms of that realm. You can see someone's experience detailed out for how it affected them, why it affected them, why they did what they did. And then you can know, oh, I've seen this experience X amount of times elsewhere, and it seems to be, I see the pattern of what people say, why it affects them, how it affects them, like that. And life's full of patterns. It's just a matter of being able to see it. And people just need a bigger sampling size to draw proper conclusions, which is, I don't directly tell people this, and I try not to think like this all the time, and I try not to do it. But it's like, oh, you haven't experienced a lot of this stuff yet. Makes sense why you think this way, like, I don't try to, like, talk down, pathetic, but
You schmuck.
yeah, I always try to encourage the growth, the exploration and the growth.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Alex,
Yes, sir.
anything else you'd like to share?
I think I poured my heart out.
This was an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for coming over, man. I really appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
Yeah. To wrap this thing up, guys, the podcast went live today. You can find it. Well, if you're listening to this, you already know how to find it. But if you enjoyed it, if you found us and you enjoyed the episode, please help this little baby project grow by either ringing the bell so you're updated when new episodes drop, subscribe if you're on a platform like YouTube where it allows things like that, and most importantly, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your colleagues. If you happen to live in Austin and you want to be a guest on the show, the best way to get a hold of me is to either follow on Instagram. You don't even have to follow, just send a message on Instagram, or you can email me, sitbackwithdavid@yahoo.com. If you're a mega fan of the podcast and you want to support us, go to patreon.com/sitbackwithdavid. And I feel like there's one more thing I normally announce at the end, and I'm completely forgetting what it is, so we're going to skip it. For now, though, thank you for coming on and being a guest. Thank you to anyone that watched, listened, and supported the podcast. I greatly appreciate all of you. And stay healthy, stay happy. We will see you next Saturday for another episode of David's Saturday Night Sit Back. Bye, everyone.